EV adoption is hitting record highs in China. They are one of the first big countries to go crazy with the technology. And the fact that we don't see many on US roads has more to do with politics and policies than the technology itself. So I'm chatting today with Kyle from Out of Spec, who just got back from China. And I would say Shanghai, but no, he went all over the place by land. And so we're going to find out a little bit about some of the models available, the quality, the value, all that good stuff. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So Kyle, your trip was 10 days. How long were you there?
Yeah, just about 10 days. That includes a little bit of travel. So we really had like real 8 or 9 solid filming days.
Wow. And you landed, you started right from the airport, checking out the cars. Let's talk first about the idea that China makes garbage. Now, a lot of phones are made in China. iPhone famously made in China. iPhone I wouldn't call garbage. Tesla's highest rated cars are made in the Shanghai factory. What was your experience with the quality of some of the cars you experienced?
Yeah, well, I think right off the bat, I'm certainly no China paid shill over here trying to make them sound great. But I will say, based off of the experience with the products we tested, now they certainly do make some garbage cars. There are some terrible cars that come out of China, but there's also some incredibly high quality, well engineered vehicles. And we tend to focus on battery electric vehicles on our channel. Therefore, we tested, some of the newest and the latest, greatest, and they were just amazing. Some of them were like pretty mediocre, but in general, the cost is great, the build quality is great. The software has been amazing in most of these cars, and as we'll talk about at some point in the future, the driver assistance is great as well. Yeah, they're lacking on a couple things, but in general, man, they kind of are doing pretty well in the car market.
They've really upped their game. The features, of course, there's a ton of features, a lot of features we don't even see here. Things like the self-driving indicator light. And we will have a whole second show tomorrow or the next day just talking about the driverless technologies in China. So for value, what kind of cars were you driving? What kind of prices were they? And we should mention you got a China driver's license.
Yep, certainly. So I was able to drive and road trip all around the country. I think I drove a few thousand miles in my week that I was there. I love to drive. So I was out road tripping, DC fast charging, battery swapping, doing a bunch of different interesting tests that is new and unique to us and our audience. I was able to charge the world's fastest charging battery electric vehicle. We were able to drive on a racetrack in China, which was really cool. And it was a beautiful facility. So we really did get a great experience of everything. I think the biggest takeaway of probably the types of cars that are there are relatively, everything, even the crappiest cars that are sold are like fully vertically integrated software with typically like a Qualcomm Snapdragon, something, nice high quality chip that's running the back end. The real big boy players are doing everything vertically integrated, similar to Tesla, their own chips, their own, parts supply as much in-house as possible, their own very high voltage architectures that we're seeing over there. And so there is a mix. There is this totally different supply base than we have in the US, from metals to battery packs. And man, it's crazy that even some of the really cheap EVs, the under $20,000 stuff, is like just as fast as Tesla screen response and great driver assistance. It's really amazing.
I'd be curious to know why it is that legacy autos struggles so much with their software. I've heard that it's because there's too many part suppliers and all of them are doing their own little bits of the code. But I mean, Volkswagen spent a fortune trying to get it sorted out before kind of throwing in the towel and saying, "Hey, Rivian, mind if we copy your homework?"
Yeah, I just had dinner. Yeah, I had dinner with the CEO of Volkswagen Group just recently during CES. Spoke a lot about software and the Rivian deal and how that's expanding. I think most of it comes down to, and again, I'm from the outside looking in, and I'm sure there's a bunch of small specific issues in each individual company that does hold up software development. But I think at the core of it, most of the problems stem from the culture in the company. It's typically slow moving, not very heavy on innovation. And a lot of it is reliant, the automotive base in the Western world, reliant on supplier base.
Wow. That would make sense. That would make sense. So you said you got to experience the fastest charging EV. How fast was it?
Right. So Zeekr is under the Geely group, which Geely is kind of like the Volkswagen group of China. There's a bunch of sub brands, and they also are very involved with some Western brands. Lotus, Volvo, Polestar, others, Mercedes with Smart. And so, they're a real big boy player in China, and they have developed what they've called the golden battery or the golden brick. And it's actually an in-house development. I believe the cells are outsourced, but the battery pack and the specifications for the minerals in the cells are all done in-house from Zeekr. And it was a small battery. This is a 75 kilowatt hour version that I tested, so smaller than even a Model 3 or Model Y long range equivalent. And it charged, the peak rate was unbelievable. They claim 5.5 C. I think we saw over 6.5 C, so 470 kilowatts or so peak. But what was more impressive was just how flat that charging curve was 10 to 80 in 9 minutes and 45 seconds. It was absolutely insane.
That is, if I could get that kind of charge, I probably wouldn't start my road trips at 100%, or at least I wouldn't feel I need to.
Yeah, I mean, it does eliminate a lot of other variables. It brings up other questions like durability and longevity, which we're going to meet with them on. But they offer 160,000 kilometer warranty was the lowest warranty we saw on this battery, and the longest. It depends on the market that the cars are sold in because they're global. They'll do a lifetime warranty for the original owner as well. So if that's the warranty, who cares how long it lasts? But it actually does sound like the durability is good.
That's pretty astounding. So, in terms of the cars, what were the brands that you saw on the road the most? Obviously, BYD is going to be at the top or near it. What else were you seeing a lot of?
Yeah, well, BYD certainly is popular. I mean, it depends regionally as well. So Shanghai is probably the most tech advanced city that we went to. I mean, you can go down south to like Shenzhen and see like crazy stuff, of course. But Li Auto was incredibly popular. We saw a bunch of Lees everywhere. Yeah, BYDs, of course. Tesla was still very popular. You see a bunch of threes, bunch of Ys. They're not the most technical buyers buying those cars, though. In the US, I would say the real hardcore tech enthusiasts, the future focused people are all driving Tesla, some Rivian, some Lucid, but mostly Tesla. In China, that's like the car you buy for your grandson, or like, it's the normal Toyota Corolla equivalent. They're safe, they're reliable, they hold their value pretty well, and that's how they sell in that market. They don't sell on the tech compared to its competition. Yeah, a bunch of other cars, startup automakers, Leap, for example, you see quite a few of. But it was surprising just how many Lees we saw. The big boy cars, you're seeing Ito, which is a really kind of getting up there in the price. And by that, I mean, they're like 40 or 50 grand, but that's a luxury EV in China, which is crazy. Yeah, the list goes on and on. Zeekrs are very popular, Geely brands in general. But just the roads, to give you an impression, BMW, Audi, Mercedes, the German players that used to have a strong foothold in China, Volkswagen, you see those cars on the road quite frequently. However, you don't really see many models newer than, let's just say, 2015, 2016. They kind of end there. Like, to see a brand new Mercedes is pretty rare. Everything after like 2015, 2016 is like, that's when the China auto boom happened. And you see people buying those cars, driving those cars, using those cars. So you do see the German stuff. It's just the old German stuff. It's so weird.
So the ones that came in when it was still a prestige brand and not as much. Well, we've seen the EQ series sales in China pretty much collapse. Not very popular, whole lot of money. And yeah, if there are good domestic options that are half the price, a third the price, why wouldn't you? The Li Auto, they've got their minivan. You had a chance to check that out. What was your impression? What'd you think?
Yeah, so the Li Mega is the van. It is their first battery electric model. The rest of the Li lineup are range extended EVs, which those are incredibly popular among most of the Chinese automakers. Maybe worth a topic for another day. But the Li Mega is really a technological marvel. It's actually one of the few Chinese cars that I would say drives really well. Most of them are incredible software experiences, but lacking on the true engagement from a driver standpoint that Tesla and other automakers have been able to do really well. The Lee Mega really drives nice. Plus, it's got insane software and insane driver assistance and insane performance. And the problem, though, so the Chinese people, generalizing, but the Chinese people generally recognize the Lee Mega for its technical prowess. They understand it's got insanely fast charging, again, 550 kilowatt peak, very, very crazy range, all of that. The technical components are good, but they're not buying them. They're actually pretty rare. And the reason is there was this big social media bubble in China, and people said it looks like a coffin. And they're like, I don't want to drive a coffin. So it's a stylistic thing, it's an image thing as to why they're not selling so well. So it's undergoing a big refresh right now. We've seen spy photos, and I think that's going to help sales quite a bit because everyone thinks it's awesome. They just think it's ugly.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's great. And it comfortably seats what, 6, 7?
Yeah, yeah. So the one we had like the big captain's chairs in the second row, which are like they lie flat. That's like a real big thing. These Luxo vans, Zeekr 009, Volvo EM90, Xpeng X9. There's a Rowie or a Row thing that does it, and of course the Lee Mega are like these, and Zeekr Mix are these really popular electric vans. The Lee Mega that we tested had the like executive second row package, and it was unbelievable. Screen came down. You can get heated, cooled massage second row. You're in your own chair, and you know it was just so impressive. I'm not sure if it was 3 seats across in the rear.
That model may have been a two row van.
No, it was 3, but
Oh, it was
I
still
don't know if
3,
it
but
was
it
a
might have
6
been
or 7 seat. Yeah.
sure. Still pretty fantastic capacity, and a very functional vehicle, and it sounds like a reasonably affordable one, despite
Yeah.
being
The market is affordable. The Mega's the most expensive out of all of them. You can also get some really high end versions of the Volvo EM90 and Zeekr 009. But in general, the like Xpeng X9 or Xiaopeng X9 is the real value player in that segment. It's almost half the cost of the Lee Mega. It's like well under, I think it's even under $40,000. It's got great luxury, very comfortable ride, great driver assistance, and I was really impressed with the X9.
Do you think foreign brands will have any chance of getting into the Chinese auto market after this?
Well, there's always a chance. I do think there's a niche that's probably small, but there is like a driving enthusiast culture in China, actually. You'll see a lot of young people modifying cars and, you know, seeing the Western media of the traditional automotive, you know, Top Gear style videos and building that car enthusiasm. So I do think like actually weirdly, but I do think like some like fun manual transmission combustion cars have a chance in China, but we're talking small scale in terms of like seeing BMW regain success in the market or Mercedes regaining success. No, I really don't think it's going to happen without major cultural shifts. For example, I mentioned I spent some time with Volkswagen people recently. Their plan is to build in China for China. That means the entire development process, the entire model selection is done in China. They have an official partnership with Xiaopeng for all of their software and electrical architecture for the Eastern world for China. And then in the Western world, they're developed in the US and Europe, and they use the Rivian, you know, sort of electrical architecture and software stack and all of that stuff. That's their approach. I would be really shocked if it works out well in the long run in China for them. I just think relying on other companies to, you know, build you up is not the, you know, future promise and the future hope that you need as a large company. Volkswagen, for example, is one of the largest automakers in the world. I can't understand for the life of me why they couldn't just do the Rivian software and hardware package themselves. But again, that is a true cultural problem inside the organization.
I think I'd agree with all of that. And how soon do you think we're going to be seeing these Chinese brands conquering new markets? I know in Mexico, they've already got, Mexico does not have a good support system for electric charging. A lot of homes don't have access to really any power in a place you can park. But electric vehicles from China are still making their way into the market in a pretty big way. Developing markets, South America, Central America, Africa, India. Do you see China being a key player there, considering the
Yeah.
value and
They will dominate any market they enter. So, South America, no question, you're already seeing it with the Cherry brand, you're seeing it with BYDs. You drive around Mexico, you see these vehicles now in the cities. Even in the US, I think there's a future. I'm not an expert on the tariff situation. I'm not an expert on the legalities of bringing these cars in. But what I will say is, I own a Chinese car here. Actually, I own a Polestar that was built in China, and so that made it in. Volvo EX30 under the Volvo brand is a Chinese car. It was developed mostly in China under the SEA platform. That will be built in Belgium and then shipped over here. And so, yeah, Chinese cars are coming. There's no way around it. They'll build them wherever they need to, and that stuff's coming to the U.S.
well, Polestar's got their new factory in the southeast somewhere, Georgia, South Carolina, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
Charleston. It's the
is
Volvo
it
Polestar
okay?
collaboration. Yeah.
And then, yeah, the way they were able to import so many Polestars and Volvos was with a tariff drawback because Volvo exports so much from the U.S. to China, so they were able to counteract that. But that only works up to a certain volume. But yeah, building factories domestically, building them in third countries that do not have those restrictions is another way to do it. But you know what they say: if you can't beat them, ban them. I guess that only works for a while. That will slow the rising tide. It will not stop the floodwaters.
Yeah, it's not an area I'm an expert in. I also don't really have much of an opinion either way. I would say I drove some cars there that I would be like, damn, I really wish I could buy this car. And it would probably be the Lee Mega, honestly, just because I thought it drove really well. And that's been my issue with most Chinese cars is unbelievable software, like I mentioned, but the driving dynamics, they're just not very well tuned. And what it feels like to me is that most of them, because the development cycles are so compressed, you used to have a typical 5 or 7 year development process for a vehicle that is now being compressed down. The Germans can do about 3 years in the quickest operation. China's doing 18 months, which is insane. But you can tell most of it was done in simulation and not in testing and tuning.
Guys, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Head on over to Kyle's channel, Out of Spec, and all of the Out of Spec channels, reviews of the podcast, all of it. There's a whole bunch. I'll put a link or two down below. And everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual, and come back tomorrow because we're going to be talking about autonomy on vehicles in China. Yeah. And so, yeah, cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, tomorrow.